So I'm using an Aran-weight to do the tutorial, which is the yarn weight I suggest in the pattern. However, as I've already explained in my designer part of the video, you can also use this pattern, make some adaptations to use it with a chunkier weight and also with a DK or finer weight yarn as well. So if you haven't watched that part of the video, head back and then you'll find out a little bit more about the ways you can adapt it and my tips for using different weight yarns. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, let's attach our yarn to our hook, and then we're going to start by chaining 29 and 1 extra, so 30 in total. So go ahead and chain 30. Right, now into our chain of 29 plus the 1, we are going to work a 1 double crochet all the way along. That's double crochet in UK terms, that's a single crochet in US terms. So we're working into the second chain from the hook. So this is what is on the hook, this is the first, this is the second. I'm going to work a double crochet into there. So dive straight in with my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both. And I'm going to do that in every chain along for 29 stitches. So dive straight in, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 on the hook, yarn over, pull through both. So I'm going to continue along the chain now, doing that into each of those. So if you want to pause the video and I will meet you at the other end. Okay, I'm just coming to the end of the chain and I just want to point out and make sure that you know where you're working into. So I've got 2 chains left. If you're counting along, you may be aware of that, but sometimes you lose count, you don't know where you are, or sometimes you just don't count. So what I would just make sure you do is that you are not losing this last chain here. So I'm going to do a double crochet into that one, and then this is the last one here. What you can do is very gently just pull where you started your knot, and you can see this knot here is tightened now, so I can see that's very clearly not where I'm going to be crocheting, but I've got this one extra space here that I do want to work into. Sometimes the knot at the start can be quite loose and wide, and people add in an extra stitch by crocheting into the knot at the start. So if you can see quite a big loop at the end where you've got a relatively loose slip knot from the beginning, just give it a slight little tug and start to see it come together, and that should hopefully help you make sure that you don't work into that slip stitch. Okay, right, let's look at block 1 next, which is called butterflies. And in this block, we're going to be creating little windows in little groups of 4 that basically represent the wings of a butterfly. And we're using slip stitch, half triple crochet and treble crochet. In the combination of skipping stitches is how we're going to make the windows. So let's get started. Right, so for this first row, which is row 2 overall, we're going to slip stitch in the first, half treble in the next, slip stitch, half treble, slip stitch, half treble, all the way along. So to slip stitch, I'm going to turn my work. So I'm going to just do the chain 1 from my DC row and then turn. And I don't want to work in, so you can see this is that chain 1 that I've just created. We're going to be working into the first stitch of the row, so not the chain 1 into that first actual stitch. So slip stitch, we go under both arms of the V, yarn over, I'm going to pull that yarn through the stitch and the one on the hook, so through and through. That's a slip stitch. A half treble starts like a normal treble where we put the yarn over first and we go under both arms of the V, yarn over and pull through that first stitch. So we've got 3 loops on the hook. The difference is with the half treble we yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Then we're back to a slip stitch, so I go underneath both arms of the V, yarn over, pull through and pull through, and then a half treble, yarn over, under both arms of the V, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through all three. Do it one more time, so a slip stitch under both arms, yarn over and pull that yarn through the stitch and the one on the hook, then a half treble with a yarn over first, under both arms of the V, yarn over and pull through just that stitch, then yarn over and pull through all three loops on the hook. So I'm going to carry on with that pattern, slip stitch, half treble, all the way to the end. So if you want to pause and meet me, I'll see you at the other end. So I'm just about to get to the end of the row, and you can see it forms this like little dash across here, which is a nice little feature. I just want to point out as I'm getting towards the end, and this is that first row, so you should end up on the same stitch that you started. So this is a slip stitch starting row, so I should end on a slip stitch. I can see I've got 2 stitches left, so I'm going to be doing a half treble here, but I just wanted to make sure that you always catch, this is in that first, doing that first row, catch this last stitch here and not miss it, because what tends to happen is that stitch where we've bent over slides down the side of your crochet. So I'm going to do a half treble into my 28th stitch there, and I can see as well that just by the shape of that end I can see that I'm not quite at the end. I'm going to then do my slip stitch into that final row there, and that pulls, oh, I've just caught the yarn a little bit, pull that through, there we go, pulls that side up. So that is row 2 completed. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn for the next row. So for row 3 I'm going to do the same but in the opposite way round. So I started with a slip stitch, half treble crochet. This time I'm going to start with a half treble crochet and slip stitch. So we're basically just doing the opposite of what we've just done. So I've got my chain 1, so we're not working into that chain that I've just created. We're then going to go into this first stitch of the row here, and that's where I'm going to complete a half treble. So I need to yarn over first, half treble into that stitch, yarn over, 3 on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. Then I do my slip stitch, then I do back to a half treble, and I'm going to do that all the way along for this row. So I'll meet you at the other end when I've completed that. Okay, I'm just coming up to the end of my row, completed a half treble, slip stitch in here, so I know I'm on the right track because I'm finishing with a half treble crochet. That's what I started on, and now I can see the 2 arms of the V of this last stitch. I just need to do a little bit of wiggling to get my crochet hook underneath both of those bits. There we go. Put up, 3 on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. Okay, that completes row 3. So I've now got a little detailed row here, 2 rows of the slip stitch half treble crochet pattern. So now we're going to get into starting to form the little windows to make the butterfly wings. So we're going to start off, I'm going to do a chain 2 this time, and the reason is because on this next row I'm going to be making trebles so they're slightly taller. So a chain 2 this time and turning my work, and I'm going to now start working along in trebles, and then we're going to be skipping stitches to start forming the windows. So we're going to begin with a treble in the next 4 stitches. So again, I do not want to crochet into my chain 2 here. I'm going to do 1 treble into the next 4. So the first stitch starts here, so a treble into that one, there's 1 treble, 2, 3 and 4, and remembering I'm working under that both arms of the V, so that anatomy of the stitch below where it's formed that V shape on the top, I'm working under both of those strands. Okay, so I've done my 4, and then we're going to chain 1 at the top here, so that's like forming along the top of the stitch, and we're going to skip the stitch under it. So we'll skip, chain 1, skip 1 stitch, and then I'm going to put one treble into the next stitch along. So that's where I've then made a hole, so that's on purpose. I've skipped one and I've got the chain at the top. I'm then going to chain one again. I'm going to skip another stitch and then put a treble in next to that. So there you can see I formed the first two of my butterfly wings. I'm now going to do another two trebles into the next two stitches. So I'm forming a little group of three here, but in their own stitch. So there's 1, 2, in the next stitch, 1 treble, 3, like that. And then I'm going to start another butterfly. So I'm going to chain one again, skip 1 stitch, 1 treble into the next. Chain 1, skip a stitch again, and treble it into the next. And then I want to form that little, it basically forms like a little buffer in between the groups. So I've done 1 treble, another 2 into the next 2 stitches. So there's 1 treble, 2, so a little group of 3 again. Now I'm going to repeat the same. Chain, skip, treble in the next, chain, skip, treble in the next stitch along. So I've got 3 groups at the moment of those little windows. So I'm going to do another 2 trebles. Chain 1, skip a stitch, treble in the next. Chain 1, skip a stitch, treble in the next. And then this time, so I've got that 1 treble forming that last little group. You should have, I've completed, that's part of 1 treble, and then there's 3 more to go. So you just do a treble in all the way to the end now. So what you're ending up doing is 4 trebles on the end. Just catching under the right bit of the stitch there. So where it says in the pattern 4 stitches remaining, it's basically from this point here. So once you've done that chain 1 here, you've then got your last stitches to go into, so you've got 4 trebles on the end. So you end up with your little filets in the middle there like that. So that's row 4, and what we're going to do now is we're going to repeat that row exactly the same, so that we are working the same stitches on top of each other, so that we end up creating this same window here and here, same window here and here. So it's quite useful that you're knowing that you're working on top, directly on top, so that you can spot if you have missed a stitch or gone wrong, because your little windows to form your butterflies should be sitting directly on top of each other. Okay, so let's go ahead and chain 2 and then turn, and then we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to start with a row of 4 first of all, 4 trebles into the top here. So yarn over and into that first stitch. Remember, not in the chain 2 you've just done. Make sure you're going straight into the actual top of the stitch, which is here. To do your 4 trebles, there's 1 treble, 2, 3, and 4. You're then going to do the same of chaining 1, skipping the stitch, which is the stitch above the hole there, and you're going to work into the top of this treble here. So you're skipping that stitch, treble into here, yarn over, and just help it through a little bit because it's a little bit harder where it's more on its own. And then once you do your chain 1, you're skipping the stitch again, so skipping this top stitch here and working your first of the 3 into this next stitch, and as you will go along you'll see you're working directly exactly the same thing into the stitch below. So I've done 1 treble, 2 trebles, 3 trebles, chain 1, skip a stitch, 1 treble into here, which is directly above the treble below, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then do 3 trebles. And you keep going along, just copying exactly the same thing. Chain 1, skip that stitch, put a treble in the top of that treble there, chain 1, then do another 3 trebles from this point, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, skip, 1 treble, chain 1, skip, and then I'm going to do trebles into the end, which should be 4 trebles now. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Gets me back to the end of the row. And there is my first little butterfly row. So you can see there my little butterflies forming with the little gaps that we've created. Okay, so for row 6 we're going to do another set of butterflies, but we're going to shift them along so that they are forming in this gap here. So on this next row we're only going to have 3 sets because we're going to work above here, here and here. So we're going to start by having a longer group of trebles to begin, which is going to go right up to where these first lot of butterflies are, then butterflies and so on. So on this row 6 we're going to start by 1 treble in the next 7 stitches. So I'm just going to complete my chain 2 from the end of the previous row and turn. And remember again, we're not working into the chain, we're going into the first stitch of the row. So I'm going to yarn over and do my first treble into that first stitch, and then I'm going to into the next 7 stitches put 1 treble. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now because we are covering over, we're working over the top of the butterflies we've done before, we have got to work into this space above the gap. Now ideally you do want to try and get still underneath the double arm of the stitch here rather than putting the stitch into the space. The reason for that is that it just keeps the stitches sitting on top. It can change the look of your gap if you work into that big hole, because you'll get the stitch coming over the top. If you're really struggling, it's not the be all and end all if you end up having to work into that space, if you really have to. But ideally, try and see if you can get your stitch working under here. So I'm going to do my treble, and I'm just going to help it through with my nails underneath that double arm of that space, and then I can complete the treble as normal. Then I've got to do a treble on the top of that 1 treble there, because this is my 6th one. And then the 7th of that row goes into the top of this space here again. So I'm just going to help it under, push it through like that. So that should be my 7, stopping at the point directly above here. So let's just check 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. So they're my 7 stitches. I'm now going to do my butterflies that are going to work over the top of this space here. So I chain 1, oops, twisted my hook around, chain 1, and then I'm going to skip this stitch. I'm going to treble in the next, chain 1, skip a stitch and treble in the next. Now this is going to be on the top of this butterfly, so I'm going to help it underneath and get that in there. So there I formed my butterfly, and then we're going to do a second treble and a third treble like we did in between before, but I am working on the top of the previous one. So if I just show where that's at, you can see that I'm creating a new set of butterflies in that gap of 3 that we did before, and then I'm putting the new gap of 3 above those butterflies. Okay, so we're going to carry on working along. So I need to chain 1, skip, and in the next do 1 treble, chain 1, skip, and then I'm working into that one there. It's easy to miss, so do keep a check out that you're not missing those ones that are above the gap because they're a little bit tighter. And then I need to do 2 more trebles to have that 3 gap in between. I need to work above the gap there. And then I'm going to do 1 more set of butterflies, so chain 1, skip, 1 treble, chain 1, skip, 1 treble. It needs to go above that window there. And then I'm going to be doing trebles all the way along to the end now. So that's the first one. Okay, so I've now started to form a second row of butterflies, but I've shifted them into this gap here, so they're appearing here, here and here. So similarly to when we did this row, we're now going to do exactly the same row again to form the other half of these butterflies on top of this row. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn, and then I'm going to complete my 7 treble crochets in top of these ones. I'm going to chain 1 and skip a stitch, and then I'm working a treble directly on top of that treble below, chain 1 and skip, and then do my set of 3 trebles in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, skip, treble in the next, chain 1, skip, and then a treble in the next 3. So I'm going to keep going to the end, and I'll see you when I get to the other side. Okay, I'm just at the end of doing my 7 treble crochets to reach the end of the row. Just catch that last one. And then I'm going to chain 1 and turn. Okay, brilliant. Right, so we're now at the end of that first block. So we've created our butterfly block. We're now going to complete a floral Irish stitch. We're going for a florally petally theme now. The first couple of rows that we're going to do are sort of foundation to that rows. We have to make sure that we're doing right side, wrong side. So some of these extra rows in between are to sort of get us on the right or the wrong side, because some of the stitches later on, we want to make sure we're doing all on the same side so that the texture forms on one side of the cowl. So we need to do some rows in between. So we're going to start off this block of Irish stitch by doing some of those foundational rows to get us where we need to be. So I ended with a chain 1 because at the end of that row, because we're going to start again with a slip stitch on row 8, and we're going to do what we did before here, which is doing a row of slip stitch, half treble, slip stitch, half treble all the way to the end. So we're going to start off by that slip stitch again, where we go straight in and we're pulling the yarn through the stitch on the hook, sorry, through the stitch and the loop on the hook. Then a half treble where we yarn over, insert, yarn over and pull through. So we've got 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3, and we repeat that all the way along. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will see you at the end. So I'm just at the last stitch. So like before, if I started on a slip stitch, I should end on a slip stitch, like so. And then I'm going to do the next row, row 9, doing it exactly the same thing but in the opposite start. So I'm starting with a half treble, slip stitch, half treble. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and now start with a half treble. So I will carry along and do this next row of half treble, slip stitch, half treble. Okay, so I've got to the end of those 2 rows and we're ready to do the first bit of the floral stitch. Okay, so row 10 is the first of the floral Irish stitch part, and we're going to, I've just ended on that half treble slip stitch row on row 9, so I'm just going to do the chain 2 and then turn. Again, we're doing a chain 2 on that end of that because we're going to be starting this row with trebles, so we need that extra chain in there. And we're not working into that chain 2 that I've done, we're going to be working into this first stitch here. So not working into the chain, we're working into the first stitch, which is here. And we're going to do 1 treble into that first stitch. We're then going to skip the next stitch, and then this is where we're going to create a little cluster that forms our floral motif, if you like. So we've skipped that stitch, and then into this next stitch we're going to do 2 trebles, chain 1 and 2 trebles, all in that same stitch. So we're basically making a stitch like this with a chain in between, and that all stems from this one space that we're going to be working into. So just to go over that again, we're going to do that little cluster pattern, skip 1 stitch, and we're going to do that all in here. So work 2 trebles into that stitch along. There's the first treble. In the same space, a second treble. Then I chain 1, and in that same space again, I'm going to put another 2 trebles. So I'm making like a little cluster within that same stitch space. That looks like that. So you can see in that one space here, 2 trebles, chain, 2 trebles. Once I've completed that little cluster, I then am going to skip 3. So if we look at the top here, this is the chain. I can see all the stitches coming out of this spot here. So this is the next 1, 2, 3 that we're skipping. We're going to do that same little cluster into the 4th one. So skip 1, 2, 3, work the little iris cluster into here. 2, 3, there it is. So I do 2 trebles again in that same stitch. Oh, I've not gone under both arms there. Did you see how that pulled up? So if I'm seeing a big loop like that, instantly I can think, oh, hang on, I'm not under both bits of the stitch I should be. If you do just one side, you're going to get a real big gap. So let's just fix that. Go under both arms. Complete 1 treble. 2 treble in the same stitch space, chain 1 and another 2 trebles in that same stitch space. Skip 3 stitches again, 1, 2, 3, so I'm working over here. Next in there, so I'm going to keep going until I get to the point of dealing with the end when I can see I've only got 2 stitches left. So I'm just getting to that point where I've skipped 1, 2, 3. This is where I'm going to do that final cluster in, and I can see I've only got 2 stitches left here. That's what I should have. And then to complete, you're just going to skip one and just do a double crochet, sorry, a treble crochet into the end, that very last stitch. So skip a stitch and just work a treble into that final stitch on the end, like that. So that's your first iris row stitch, and on the next ones we're going to be working into that chain one space that we've formed here. So I'll show you as we get started, but just giving a pre show of where we're going to be working. Okay, so you can see this is you've got your two trebles like this and the chain one across the top. We're going to be working our next row into that space there. Okay, so let's get started with that. So I need to chain two first off at the end of that row and turn my work. So we're going to work a treble into the first stitch here. So not the chain that we've just completed, the 1, 2, we're going to work one treble here. Then we're going to skip along and find that chain two space, sorry, the chain one space, and complete the same little cluster group into here. So they're basically sitting on top of each other. So I'll show you. So there's my chain two. I'm going to work one treble into the first stitch. And then I'm going to skip across. So I'm technically skipping 2 stitches, but it's easy just to see that you're going to work in that chain one space, and you're going to make that same little floral iris cluster in that space. So the 2 trebles, the chain one, the 2 trebles. Skip across to the next one, next chain one space, and keep doing that all the way along, and just do that until you get to the final chain one space. Okay, so I'm just completing the last little iris motif into that last chain one space, and that's where the other half of it is. So you can see there's 2 stitches above, and then you've got the final stitch on the end. So you should see 3 tops of stitches when you get to the end, and you're just going to do the same as we did before. This time you're going to skip those last 2 stitches, and you'll just, like we did before, put a treble into that last one there. Once you've done your 2 rows, we're now just going to repeat that 2 more times. So you're going to have 4 rows of these little iris motifs. So you end each row with chaining 2, start with a treble in the first stitch, and then shuffle across to put your stitches, your little cluster motif, in the chain one space. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to do those next 2 rows of the floral iris stitch, and I'll come back to you when I'm at the end of those next 2 rows, which are rows 12 and 13. Okay, so I've managed to now complete my 4 rows of the little floral stitch. You can see we've got this really little pretty sort of expanding out little pattern there, which looks super nice. So we now need to work into the next block. So we're going to move into block 3, which is a medieval heritage. And that's kind of inspired by lots of grid patterns and kind of trellises and things like that. So it's a very similar sort of idea to this, where we're going to be skipping stitches, but we're going to be creating a different kind of grid system, grid pattern. It's really important on this next start that we're going to be working into just the trebles of this row above. So let me show you that in a little bit more detail. So once you've done your 4th set of this, or 4th row, which is row 13 of the iris stitch, you end with 1 chain, just a chain 1 and turning, compared to where we've been doing 3, but we're doing chain 1 ready for this next row, which is going to be starting with a slip stitch in the half treble row again. So we're doing one of those rows to kind of get this back being straight, because you can see it's sort of got this undulating edge. Now, as I was just saying, it's really important that we work into just the trebles, because we've got this chain one space. If you work into that chain one space as well, you're going to start finding your work splaying out because you've started to add in stitches. So I've chained one and turned my work. Let me just undo that a little bit because I'm worried I've twisted it around too many times. So there's the ends of my iris and turn. And then I'm going to now start with that slip stitch, half treble, slip stitch, half treble row to straighten myself back out again. But I'm going to only work in the trebles. So we start off by skipping this first stitch here, and there's the top of my two trebles. I'm going to work in here and here, skip the chain, work here and here, work here and here, skip the chain, here and here. Okay, so all of these chain stitches in the middle, which we were working into before, we're now going to skip so that we don't start increasing the width. So you're going to start off with your slip stitch, not in this first one, you're going to put it straight into here. So slip stitch there, treble in, sorry, a half treble into the top of that next stitch, skip the chain, go straight across with your slip stitch into the next treble, half treble into the next, slip stitch in the next, half treble in the next, skip the chain, slip stitch. Okay, so you're just working your stitches into the top of the trebles, completely ignoring that chain one, because what we're doing now is we're getting back to our 29 stitches across. Otherwise, if we do work into that chain one space, we're adding in stitches. So I'm just going to keep going along with my slip stitch, half treble, slip stitch. And then when I get to the end, oops, I just want to make sure I get one into that last stitch, and that's finishing on a slip stitch, which is the same as I started. And then if you want to make sure you're back to your 29, you can just double check and count along your stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So I'm now back to my 29, and then I can start, my next bit's going to be nice and straight and I won't be flaring out because I've just worked into those treble spaces. Okay, so then we're going to do the same again like we were doing before, where we're going to do a half treble slip stitch row now, so the opposite. So I'm going to chain one and turn, and remember, we're not working into the chain, we're working into that first stitch. So I'm starting with a half treble this time, and then a slip stitch, and ending on a half treble where I started. Okay, we're going to do one more row of this, row 16, and that's all, again, as I was saying earlier, is about getting us to be on the right or the wrong side. So we're going to just do another row of that. So I'm going to chain one and do a slip stitch, half treble, slip stitch, half treble row. So I'll see you at the end of that to complete row 16. Okay, final slip stitch to complete row 16. And then I'm going to chain one. And then row 17 is a row of 1 double crochet all the way along. So we're just highlighting this nice structure here by giving a foundation bed of a row of doubles. So I'm working not in the chain one, into that first stitch, under both arms of the V, 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way along. So let's get to the end of row 17 and I will see you at that other end. and just make sure you don't miss that final stitch on that double crochet row, sorry. There we go, and that just finishes off and highlights that little detail of that bit there. So that's the end of row 17. So now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty bit of the medieval heritage block. So at the end of row 17, I'm just going to chain 2, and then we're going to do a row of 1 treble into each stitch for row 18. So now we've just done a double crochet row, we're now going to do a treble crochet row. So work your way along, putting 1 treble into each stitch along. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, 1 treble into each stitch. Okay, so I've got to the end of row 18 with 1 treble in each stitch along. So I've got my 29 stitches there, and now we're going to start creating the medieval heritage block. So I'm going to do a chain 2 at the end of that, because we're going to continue working in trebles, and then I'm going to do 1 treble into this first stitch here. So like we've had before, this is the chain 2 that we're not working into, but we're going to work directly into this first stitch here. So I'm going to put 1 treble in that first stitch, and like what we did with the butterflies, we're then going to be doing a process of chaining 1 and skipping, but this time we're going to be doing it all the way along. So I'll show you what I mean. So I've done that first treble in the first stitch, and I'm going to chain 1, skip a stitch, and put a treble in the next. Oops. Chain 1, skip a stitch, treble in the next. So what I'm now doing is actually creating like a grid: skip, treble in the next, chain 1, skip, treble in the next, chain 1, skip, treble in the next, and I'm doing that all the way along. So what I'm basically creating is like these little posts with a gap in between. So I'm going to keep going, doing that same all the way along, skipping a stitch, working a treble in the next, chain 1, skip a stitch, treble in the next, chain 1, skip a stitch, treble in the next, and so on. So I'm going to keep doing that all the way till I get to the end, and do that until you've got 2 stitches left, and I'll just double check with you what we're doing at that point. Okay, so let's work along to the end, and I'll see you when we've got 2 stitches left. So we're at the point that we've got the 2 stitches, and we're just simply going to do 1 last chain, and we're going to skip 1 and just do our last treble into that space like that. So we've got exactly a end to our first row. Now for row 20, we're essentially repeating row 19, because we're going to be creating the holes directly above, like we did when we were creating our little cluster here, but this is a complete row of like a grid, so we're going to be working on top. So this is a repeat of that row 19, so working those same stitches into the one before. So we need to chain 2 from the end of our last row, then we're going to turn, and we're going to do the same as what we did before, because that chain 2 doesn't count. So we're going to do a treble into that first stitch there, and you'll see that that then just becomes 1 stitch on the top, chain 1, skip across, and then we're working 1 treble in the top of all the trebles below it. So it should still work out that we're chaining 1, skipping a stitch, treble in the next, like that. Chain 1, skip, and that means you're working on top of the treble. So if you find yourself not working on top of a treble, you may have missed your skipping or missed a chain. So just make sure that's your kind of like marker point, I guess, that you are doing your trebles on top of a treble. Don't forget to do your chain 1 in between, because that accounts for the skip that you're making. But we're going to go all the way along, just repeating that same to make this double row of windows. There. Okay, and then we're going to just put a little breaker row in between, just kind of bring everything back together. And we're going to do next for row 21 a row of trebles into each stitch, and you should have your 29 stitches still. So that's a good point to just double check you haven't dropped anything anywhere. So we're going to chain 2 and turn, and then work a row of trebles into each stitch. Like when we had the butterfly one, you've got that window to work above. You do need to put a stitch into that chain. So again, ideally you want to try and get your hook under that V rather than just through the window. It just places your stitch in a better place to make it more even and flatter looking. But if you really struggle, depending on the yarn that you're using, you might find it harder with different yarns, you can go into that window if you really need to. So let's just work our way along with the treble in each. Okay, that's the end of that middle row 21 that we're just breaking this up, and it also just defines those window spaces. So that's the end of row 21. We're now going to repeat what we've just done again. So we're going to do 2 rows of the windows, and then we're going to do 1 row of the trebles. So I'm going to go ahead and get on with that. So I'm going to start by doing my chain 2 and turning, and then I can get on with this next set of window rows. Okay, so I've completed row 24, and I've got that final row of the treble crochet, and we're now ready to go on to the final block. So before we do that, just to get a stable start to that next block, we're going to do a row of double crochet all along each stitch for 29. So we need to have just done a chain 1 at the end of row 24 to then turn, and then making sure we're working in the first stitch, not the chain, we're going to do a double crochet all the way along. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and I will see you at the end of row 25 with a complete row of double crochet. Okay, so that's the row of double crochet complete for row 25. So I'm just going to chain 1 and ready to turn for row 26. And row 26 is the start of our rolling hills, where we're going to be creating little puffs along to represent that. And they're very cute, and I quite enjoy making these. These are fun. But this is where it's been really important we have the right side, wrong side, so that all our puffs all end up on the same side is the idea. So to begin, what we need to do is we're going to double crochet into the first 2 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So there's 1 double crochet, and in the next stitch another double crochet, and then we're ready to start doing our first little puff. So how we do them is we go yarn over first, we insert it into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 on the hook, yarn over, insert, yarn over and pull through, 5 on the hook, yarn over, insert, yarn over and pull through, 7 on the hook, yarn over, insert, yarn over and pull through, 9 on the hook. And I'm inserting them each time into the same stitch. So I've got this big gather of loops on my hook, all coming from the same stitch. I then yarn over 1 last time, but this time I'm going to pull that yarn all the way through those 9 loops. And then I'm going to go straight in from that point into the next stitch and complete a double crochet, and that secures the puff. I'm then going to do 2 more double crochets in the next 2 stitches. So 1 double crochet, next stitch, a 2nd double crochet, and then I'm going to do a puff again. So I'll show you again. Yarn over, insert under both arms of the V, yarn over, pull through 3 on the hook, yarn over, insert, pull through 5, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through 7, yarn over, insert, yarn over and pull through 9, yarn over one more time. Try and push your hook against the back of those stitches to make your channel through as easy as possible, and pull through. Then I'm going to double crochet straight into the next stitch and then double crochet in the next 2 stitches and back to the puff again. Yarn over, insert into the stitch, yarn over, pull through 3, yarn over, insert, yarn over 5, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through 7, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through 9. Bit of a mouthful. Yarn over one last time, pull through the loops, double crochet straight into the next stitch, and then a double crochet in the next 2. So you're going to do that all the way along until you end up with 2 stitches at the end. So I'm going to carry on doing my little puffs, and I'll see you at the end. So I'm just completing my last puff of the row, and I've got to the point where I've got 2 left. You're just simply going to do a double crochet into both of those 2 stitches, but just so you know that having 2 stitches on the end after that final puff is absolutely fine. And then when we turn it over, there we go, we get to see reveal the effect. So cute. Okay, now between each row we need to do a row to make sure that we're back working on the wrong side. So we work the puffs on the wrong side so they appear on the right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to chain 2 and we're going to do a row of trebles. So row 27 is 1 treble in each stitch along. So let's do that. Let's work 1 treble into each stitch, and then this gives a little gap in between, but it also means that we are working on the right side for our next lot of puffs. Now when you get to the puff stitch here, you can see you've still got that classic V shape on the top, but you'll just feel that difference of where you're working, that you're just on top of the puff at that point, but then just carry along. So it's still just 1 treble in each of the stitches along. You'll just notice that feel a little bit different when you get to the top of the puff one, but it's still got that V shape, still just 1 V on the top for you to work into. So keep going with a treble all the way along for row 27, and I will see you at the other end. So I'm just coming up to the last couple of stitches of that treble row, and just make sure you catch that last stitch with the treble in there, and we're going to chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to do similar to what we were doing before, in that we are going to be doing the puffs again, but we're going to place them in a slightly different place so that they actually sit in between this row of puffs. So what we're going to do is we're going to oops, I got myself entangled, there we go. After that, chain 1, we're this time going to do a double crochet in the first 4 stitches, so that's the only difference. So start with 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then we're going to complete a puff, and what that will do is it will put the puff in this gap here. So we're going to do the same again of yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through and have 3, yarn over, insert, pull through 5, yarn over, insert, pull through 7, yarn over, insert, pull through 9, and then yarn over a final time, wiggle it through, and then exactly the same as we did before, double crochet straight away next door and then in the next 2 as well. Then back to a puff, 3, 5, 7, 9, yarn over and pull through, 1, 2 double crochets and a 3rd one in the 3rd stitch. There we go. So I'm just working along now, doing exactly the same as I did before, now that I'm in that new position, and you're going to keep going until you've got 4 stitches left this time. So I just completed that puff, and then after I completed that puff I had 4 stitches left, so I'm just completing now 4 double crochets straight into those last 4 stitches. And then if I turn over, you can see those little puffs are sitting in between. So what I'm going to do now is another row of trebles, and then I'm going to go back to doing another row of puffs back on this row where I'm going to start with 2 double crochet. That's what we is repeating there, rows 26 and 27. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, a treble and another puff row, and I will see you back when I've completed those things. Okay, so I'm now at the end of row 31, where I've repeated those last couple of rows that I did before. So I've got the puffs now back in this place, and then I've done that final row of treble, and that is basically the repeat. So from this point now you would go back to the beginning and row 2 and continue and repeat the pattern, but they are each of the individual sections in detail, step by step, ready for you now to carry on and design the rest of your piece. So enjoy. I look forward to seeing some pictures and some examples of what you've made with the pattern.